swear half of tech problems is like just don't touch anything. Don't breathe, don't touch anything. Welcome everyone to Return of the Mac. It has been quite a week. I took last week off, as you know, from recording and having a guest because we were in Las Vegas. And I always say, 3 days is probably my max. And I spent 5 days there and I can feel the pain today. I had the Sunday scaries. Now we are rolling into this week and I feel like I'm on the Hangover 4, but for MSPs specifically. And I was a good girl. I feel like I was a good girl. I thought I was. So Rite of Boom, that's what we were in Vegas for. Rite of Boom 2024. It has come and gone, and it was certainly one for the books, as they say. One of the things that I love about Rite of Boom is the way that it's designed, the learning opportunities. And if you weren't there, we're basically going to spend this next recording doing a fun recap of the show. So whether you attended this year or not, or maybe you want to be interested in attending next year, as I had a lot of interesting discussions prior to Rite of Boom, I was surprised some MSPs that weren't there hadn't heard of it. And it was a packed full house, sold out, amazing. And I am blessed to be here right now with the guest, which is basically one of the brilliant minds behind Rite of Boom, which is Ryan Weeks. Ryan, thank you for coming in.
Thanks. I have a fun fact for you.
Ooh, I love fun facts.
Did you know that you have attended more Rite of Booms live than I have?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. How many? There's three total?
You were able to be at 23 and 24. I was only able to make it to 24 for various reasons.
Oh my gosh. Now I feel like we need special little badges next year.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of like marking down.
Yeah.
Like
And it is crazy. There are a lot of people that have been there through all 3 years. But yeah, really, this year was mind-blowing. Since I've been behind the scenes with Andrew Morgan, the founder, since the very beginning. And I really was, when we were setting up on Wednesday before everybody got there, I was really blown away by the size. Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how's the size differed too? That's what I was curious about too.
Yeah. So year one, including vendors, sponsor staff, was 250 people. This year we were close to 1,250. So it's grown over 1,000 people in effectively 2 years, 3 conferences, 2 years.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
What was the size this year though? Wasn't it capped at like 7?
Total.
1,250 total.
Oh yeah, total attendees, including vendor sponsors. So
no wonder you're tired.
Yeah. Managing the logistics of all that was pretty exhausting, and it's crazy. You work for, and you know this because you work with the content with me. We developed this learning journey, which makes Rite of Boom a little different. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute, but you're never really sure how it's, because you're kind of structuring it and then asking other people to lend their expertise to it. And so you get there and like you've seen the slide decks, but you haven't seen the presentations. And so it's kind of like nerve wracking to kind of like have at that point lost control and just sit back and hope for the best. But every year the speakers do an amazing job. And it was definitely a really special experience. So
I can imagine. Were you sitting in the back AV place the whole time?
I was in and out. Sometimes I was up front, sometimes I was in the AV booth, sometimes I was off dealing with other stuff. It's funny because it's like in a way it's like a startup, right? A lot of us are, a few of us that are partners in the business do everything. So I could be at the registration desk printing badges one minute, and the next minute going and troubleshooting AV. Minute later going into a pre-day room and being a presenter and a speaker. Like you're just all over the place. So
any tech conference
from that regard, it was really cool.
Yeah, you kind of were a jack of all trades at this event for sure. I could see you running around, and then also I could feel the stress on you. Yeah. I'm sure being home right now feels good. And this year was in Vegas too. Was there a reason why you guys chose Vegas this year? Traditionally you see the Black Hats and the DEF Cons and the Microsoft Microsoft Ready's Ignites.
At the size of the conference that we've grown to, with the way we structure our content, which is everybody's in a single room for all content, and the size of the vendor expo hall, you need a hotel that can service a large crowd in 2 large spaces at any given time. It needs to
Right.
not be prone to weather issues. It needs to be warm, and it needs to not be super expensive for MSPs to get to and to stay at.
Mhm.
And then you're dodging spring break too, by the way, in there. So like there's a limited number of places
Huh.
geographically that you can actually hold an event of this size with the way we structure the event. So that kind of leaves you what, like California, Florida, Texas, maybe if you're lucky and manage to dodge an ice storm,
Right.
and Las Vegas. So yeah, the options are actually somewhat limited this time of year and at the size we've grown to. So
I never thought
that's
about that. I feel like I'm
yeah,
going to use that excuse next time I'm trying to convince people to go to
yeah,
Vegas for a trip. I'm going to be like, look, looking at all these factors, inexpensive, least amount of distance you have to go to. They're
yeah,
like, but Vegas, yes, a
yeah. I
burger's
mean,
going to cost you $20, but who
listen,
needs to eat?
I would love to have it in San Diego, but like,
Oh my
and
God,
that's
so
the
expensive.
yeah, the
Yeah.
room prices for MSPs are going to triple or quadruple, and that's not right, right? We want this to be, we want them to get their investment out, but we don't want them to have to spend a lot to get there
Right.
and enjoy the event. So yeah, Vegas it was this year, and Vegas it will be next year as well. The real question is,
Oh,
where will 2026 be? That's what we'll be working
spin
on
the
now.
wheel. Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Well, I will say, and if anyone didn't catch that, is part of the reason I actually like the design of this conference and many parts of the design I enjoy, but it's that everybody is in one room together. So you don't have, I've been to a lot of conferences and I feel like you have to pick and choose between what sessions you want to see and you want to go to and which rooms they're in. And of course, you're already walking everywhere. So I do enjoy the fact that all of them are in this massive room fitting. Of course, like you said, it has to fit almost 2,000 people or so or upwards of. Um, and it was fantastic. It was really like impressive. But I love that design. I love it. It feels a lot more engaging, but also more communal, right? Like
yeah,
everyone is attending to some degree, but they're certainly
yeah.
all in the same room
Every
together.
year I get the itch to, because like it would be awesome if we could do tracks in a normal way
Mm-hmm.
where you're breaking out and you're like, oh, there's a beginner business track, an advanced business track, a beginner tech track, an advanced track. You could have more speakers, you could have more content.
Yeah.
But what we hear from MSPs over and over again is that there's some sort of magic that happens when everyone's in the same room, and they actually kind of say, don't change it.
That does feel like an MSP thing too.
So so we don't change it, and then the challenge becomes when you're designing the content. And again, you know this because I worked with you and your
Yeah.
team. You can't be too technical, but you can't be not technical either in a technical track. And in
But
a
I
business
love that.
track, you have to be a little bit technical in the business track, but you can't
Yeah.
be pure business because then you'll lose the service managers and the level three, the CISOs and all the other people in the crowd. So
Right.
it's an interesting challenge from a content perspective, which, if you know me, I like impossible problems and challenges. So
But that is the
mm,
perfect formula, though, in my opinion, too, for even the DEF CONs of the world. Is I could sit in a 2 hour or 2 hour presentation about reverse engineering one specific piece of software, but it doesn't feel as inclusive is probably not the right word because you want to see these analysis broken down. But when you want to go to a presentation, the ones that people remember are a little bit more universally accepted to anybody in the audience so they can pick up bits and pieces. And it doesn't feel like you're just
yeah,
getting, waterboarded by technical things or buzzwords. You still have that flexibility
yeah.
as an attendee is
Yeah,
really
and,
important.
we prioritize. So every tribute that becomes a speaker, and so one of the things we do is we actually don't want you to hear from people you've always heard from.
Hmm.
Um, so we actually work to find people inside of various different MSP technology companies that actually do the work of cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and we pull them out and we put them on stage. So some of these speakers you've never seen or heard from. I mean, everybody knows who you are, and that you have the chops. You're a practitioner as well. But for some other vendors, we're actually pulling people out of the depths of the organization and putting them on stage to share the knowledge they have,
Yeah.
which is an important, I think, ingredient too. And then the other thing we do, which is really mean to speakers, is we say, hey, you have an hour, but you really need to cap your content at 40 minutes
I
because
know. I loved I gotta push you on that as much as possible. I'm
the
like,
whole
"Look, I
audience
have
is going to
recorded
pummel you.
this."
We give you 20 minutes um, per speaker to to allow the audience to pummel them with any question they want. And then this year we added Huva, which was an engagement app where the audience could actually ask the speakers and engage with the speakers directly through the app too. So we had questions coming in that way. And so really the speakers basically had a part-time job for the 3 days of the conference this year, which was, every single one of them really rose to the challenge, and couldn't be happier with how it came out. And to add insult to injury, not only did I make you build a presentation that kind of conformed to the learning journey, and then did 20 minutes of Q&A. This year, I also made you create a deliverable to hand out to the audience that was a
That's
go with.
right. That's right.
That was new
Okay,
this year.
so the design of the conference. Tell us
Yeah.
about the learning journey, and
Yeah.
then tell us about the artifacts that you're mentioning as well.
Yeah. So this goes back to when Andrew first called me up. He bought the writeaboom.com domain, which is the
That's
first
how
thing
it
you do
starts.
when you
Yeah.
decide you want to start a conference, right? Is buy
I
the
have a lot
domain.
of business ideas usually at parties or in bathrooms, and I'm like, I'm gonna check out the domains right there.
Yeah, let's buy the domain.
Buy the
Um,
domain.
he was like, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking. There's all these speakers that that you've heard before. They're great. But I was like, no, we need to do something different. We need to teach the audience not only how to do protect, primarily protection, which a lot of MSPs were solely focused on,
Hmm.
but we also really need to open their mind to this stuff that's right of boom, the respond and recover functionality, and the detect stuff that falls in between. So kind of wanted to take them on this journey from left to right of boom. So we're like, all right, we need frameworks, we need NIST, we need CIS, we need cyber defense matrix, we need MITRE ATT&CK. Over the years, we've started to layer in, and then those become kind of an ingredient into the recipe for the learning journey for the tech track. um, First year there was no business track. Second year business track, sort of. It was kind of tied to the tech
Yeah.
track and it became like tech track light.
Hmm.
This year we said nope, we're going to have a completely distinct framing for the business track. We partnered with an MSP, very well known, Brian Blakely, president of GMI, serial entrepreneur, well known in the MSP space, to actually vet the idea for the framing and ultimately execution of that. So, yeah, the learning journey is part of the secret sauce for Write a Boom, in that it's a deliberate methodology for the content, and then we find speakers that actually do the job of cybersecurity, as we said, and,
Hmm.
and bring them on stage to actually help kind of form the education for the conference. So it really
And
is a
not salesy. There's nothing that's like highlighting a special dashboard or some platform or a specific
yeah,
tech. I mean, it is breaking down these concepts. Like, for people who weren't there on the tech tracks, we had popping credentials, exploit and vulns, account takeovers and BECs, pwned and own, which I talked about, lateral movement and modern malware campaigns, and extortion attacks. And they all feel like you're leaving learning something and you're not being pitched something,
yeah,
rather. How did you
yeah,
choose those too for the journey? Like, did you focus on the MITRE ATT&CK kind of framework of the attack chain, or was
yeah.
this
So
more just high level?
this year it was we kind of have to go back to last year. Last year's focus was Black Hat, the ransomware threat group that's currently exit scamming their affiliates.
Hmm.
Um, and really loved that framing, but there was some redundancy in the tech track that came from that. And so I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to still stay threat informed cyber defense, which is, one of the core beliefs. We believe in structured approaches and threat informed cyber defense. But I was like, we need to figure out how to zoom out a little bit. And so I probably read 40 threat reports over the past year, and they're all largely saying the same thing. But we settled on Verizon data breach report because it has the CIS controls in it. It uses Verus, which is a really cool structured
Hmm.
format for collecting incident response data and reporting. And it leverages MITRE ATT&CK. So two of the core structure approaches that we use for Write a Boom are already baked into the report. So we decided that from a threat actor perspective, or from a threat informed perspective, we would pick the 5 attack patterns, quote unquote, or some attack patterns that had categorization in these five classes, um, to take a little bit of a broader view of the threat landscape than we did in the prior year. Challenge
But
is now, because with Black Hat we could literally go left to right of boom, from like starting with reconnaissance and research development all the way to
right.
impact. and we split the conference up. So we moved you left to right of boom over the 2 days. This year, you move left to right of boom in session, which was
Mm-hmm.
an interesting and different challenge. So every year, our
I
framing
do love
changes a
that.
little bit, which I think is part of the fun component of it too. But we always use those frameworks to help you orient yourselves and help you gain some competency in how to use them, how to think through them, how to apply them to your business.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I do feel like you've curated, like you said, kind of the top trends, but also I don't like the word trends, but it's like, what should you give a about when you go to a conference? You can hear about many a things in a security realm, but I like that you base it off of everyone loves a good Verizon data breach report too. But what should you give a about based on what we've been seeing for the
yeah.
past few years?
Yeah,
And I
because
think that's
everybody's
helpful.
chasing the next, oh, what AI powered blah 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 should I be buying? And it's like, well,
We're still not
not
patching people.
yeah, exactly, right? What I literally have the quote up on my monitor above me. Verizon Data Breach Report. The three primary ways in which attackers access an organization are stolen credentials, phishing, and exploitation of vulnerabilities.
Oh my
And once
gosh.
they're in, what do
Everyone
they
loves a good
do?
sitcom, though. We still watch sitcoms when
Right,
the story doesn't really change.
right. So
We
that
just enjoy the characters.
the kind of the premise of the whole tech track framing is like let's get really good at understanding how bad guys do what they do. And once we understand that, we realize that the things that are getting us compromised are the same things that have been getting us compromised for the last decade.
Yeah,
And we largely just need to get really, we need more discipline when it comes to pursuing basic cyber hygiene.
right,
And we use the frameworks to show you what those things are through the lens of what the bad guys are doing. And we use, this year we use multiple different types of attacks, but ultimately, it all comes back to the same three things: stolen creds, phishing, and exploitation of vulnerabilities. If you get really good at those three things, you mitigate a lot of your risk.
right. And so, I mean, as an outcome that you would desire for MSPs that are attending this conference, it's to be educated and to understand
Yeah.
to some aspect. But what are the other sort of objectives you hope they take away after hearing some of these or tech talk tracks, rather, more so than the business
Yeah.
ones?
I mean, my goal is always that people walk away with this overwhelming desire to go back and reassess their current security program state
Mm,
against essential cyber hygiene, which is CIS implementation group one. I've been looking at MSP cybersecurity programs for close to a decade now. I've never looked at one program that has CIS IG1 implemented fully
right.
without gap or without operational excellence. There's always something to improve. Part of that is because being an MSP is challenging, right? You're not just like, when I'm a CISO, I'm securing one organization that might have multiple products. When you're an MSP, you're securing dozens and dozens of organizations that have different threat profiles and different technology needs, and it's a very unique problem that they have. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a large enterprise or you're servicing SMBs. All of us are getting hacked the same way, and it's the basic stuff
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And so
Yeah.
I want them to go back and rethink through. The call to action I had on stage, as I outlined the learning journey, was I want you to go back and think through: do you have your house in order
Hmm.
before you go and do something else? um, and I hope they took that away. And if not, there's always next year. We can try to
Well,
hammer that home next year.
so you mentioned the CIS, and I feel like that was one of the pre days too, right? I feel like there was a CIS pre day.
Yeah, I think
Um,
CIS did a pre-day with PAX 8, I believe.
right, right. But was this the first year we had pre days too, pre day workshops, or?
No, we had pre-days last year too.
Oh, okay.
The most of the attendees that actually attend the main event actually attend a pre-day on the
I
day
noticed
before.
that. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
our capture the flag challenge, and just so everyone knows, from what I recall, all these pre days were pretty much sold out by the time we
Yes.
got there, and so that's also something I've never really seen at conferences before, is where the workshops almost have as much driving of engagement as the conference itself, and as people are willing to come into Vegas early to do that, right? It was the day before, and I'm not willing to come into Vegas early for anything nowadays, but I think that that shows a lot. And we had a pretty good waiting list because we knew people were going to drop off, and we still managed to fill our room pretty close to full,
Yeah.
which was terrifying. But do you see the pre days as being another kind of driving force that differentiates Right of Boom from other conferences a little bit?
I, d- in a way, because I don't in any way govern the content of the pre-days, right? The content
Mm,
that my role as the director of content for Right of Boom really only happens with what's on main stage. What I think what is interesting to see though is the hosts of the pre-days really embrace the spirit of the conference, and they're
yeah,
trying to drive the similar level of education. It might be specific to their technology or to their control, but they are trying to help MSPs understand the fundamentals of the problem, not just, here's literally how to click through the UI. It really is hands-on training.
right.
And a lot of times you're getting into, how to detect specific attack techniques, how to develop a competency in a certain skill. And so I think it leans more, I would say, technical training in some regards. And you could choose some sessions are business centric, um, leadership centric, other sessions are technical centric. So, but yeah, they're very, very well attended.
Well, and this is an
Over,
affordable conference in respect to a lot of the ones that are out there, right? Like RSA and Black Hat. That this is pretty affordable to where if you're considering next year, which you should, and you're sending, your top people to it, your top VPs, some of your leadership, some of your solutions engineers, this would be the ideal way to do it because you can at least not, you don't feel like you're just sending someone to a conference as a manager, but you're really sending someone to bring home the bacon. And like you mentioned, the artifacts. Can you kind of dive into those that bacon a little bit more?
yeah. So last year we created this threat brief for Black Hat to go with the structured learning journey for the entire event. It was like kind of a handout that people
Yeah,
literally got at their seat. And
slick.
people called us after the event and they're like, I took it back. I built tabletop exercises. I reviewed it with my team. We went back through all of
Mm,
our defenses and we checked against all the detection opportunities. And people really used it in unexpected ways. And it really kind of drove home for us the value that people saw of these deliverables that they can go back and work with their team. And so we're like, all right, what if we like really amp that up and we tried to do that at the scale of every session has a deliverable, and we call those artifacts, that
I
relate
love
to the
it.
content of that speaker.
Hmm.
um, and Yeah, I mean, people were, what I was trying to do is drop the artifact right at the time the speaker took the stage, and there would be people like already DMing me, being like, "Where's the artifact? Where's the artifact? Where's the artifact?" Like people were
Really?
like, yeah, they were going crazy for it. So, um, all the artifacts, the recordings, everything are going to be up in the Cyber Nation in a couple weeks,
I
which is a
was
free
just going to ask
resource.
that too.
Yeah,
Is it going to be accessible to just people who attended the conference, or are you looking? You're going to make it accessible to
anybody
everyone?
that is in the Cyber Nation, I believe, can see past all past Rite of Booms and this one.
Right. I'm still amazed that you guys capped it out this year at still a total of 1,200, which is insane, especially to anyone who's put on a conference. That's keeps you up at night for sure. But I mean, I went to a couple events the month prior to Rite of Boom Week, and I'm always asking partners like, "Hey, oh yeah, are you going to Rite of Boom? Are you going to Rite of Boom?" And a lot of them hadn't heard about it before. I'd
Yeah,
probably say like 1 in 10 MSPs. So consider this. This was an extremely packed already conference. And I feel like it's just the tip of the iceberg, maybe at a global scale, definitely, but definitely at a US level scale of the amount of MSPs that didn't attend or didn't know about it. Do you guys see yourself growing to that point where you're like, let's take over MSP security and blah blah blah?
I don't know about taking over, but I think like it goes back to there's a need, um, and the question is how best do we help fill that need? Is it a once a year conference, or is there something else that we need to be doing? Um,
Well, and virtual access
yeah,
too,
or
and
do we grow the conference, by attendees, or The question is, how do you grow but still keep the experience the same as it has been so
Yeah.
that it drives value? And so this year, I mean, this year over last year was another 300 to 400 MSPs over. It's almost double the amount of MSPs
Oh my
as
gosh.
last year. So
There's
that's
not
always the
enough
challenge when
bars.
we grow, is how do we keep a consistent experience for everyone?
Right.
Um, and the logistics of that get more complicated every year. So,
Yeah, I don't
we
think
brought
the
on some additional
Gaylord
help this
Conference
year.
Center would have been able to handle this many
Yeah,
people.
yeah, for sure.
That would have been a
I
little
mean, we do
crazy.
have room to grow inside the MGM next year. So
Yes.
I think, right now we're just going to kind of see. And the crazy thing is we also don't really do any marketing.
Mhm.
So it's literally just grown organically, word of mouth. So,
That fits back into
I'm
the
kind of
community
terrified of what would
thing.
happen if we actually got out there and,
Yeah.
tried to fill the top of the funnel.
I mean, you would definitely sell out even faster than you did
Yeah,
this
that's
year, I would
true.
imagine. And it does feel like, again, on that community thing, I imagine, and maybe there's you have that data, but to see like who attends and is a return attendee, or even the MSP is a return attendee for representation. I think that that's one of the biggest metrics to look at. That hey, this was really
Yeah.
valuable, and we'll want to keep coming back. And do
Yeah,
you?
I know, roughly off the top of my head, I know we had over 100 3 timers,
Uh huh.
and I
Ooh.
know we had close to 300 2 timers.
Maybe you do need to give out pins or badges next
I
year.
know, we're thinking about it.
Little
It's on my
purple
list of
hearts.
things to do. What can we do from a badge perspective to kind of show, who's been there from the start. But the interesting thing is, you talk to someone that came last year and they came just themselves, and
Mhm.
then this year they brought 3 or 4 people. And the
Right.
first timers this year were like, "This was awesome. I can't wait to bring my team next year." And so it seems to be the trend is the people that come for the first year kind of get a feel for it. They love the content. They love just the way the conference is put on, and then they want to bring, more of their team, which is great because there is the mix of the business oriented, content. Part of
Right.
my challenge, especially like those service managers out there, is yes, your job is primarily technical and like how are you instrumenting the controls, the process, the people, but like you're also this key cog in the wheel for figuring out how to, one, reduce costs, increase margins, and grow the profitability of the business. Those service managers to me are really the people that need to be there because they're getting the technical content to try and kind of gap and assess their existing cybersecurity stack, but then they're
Hmm.
also getting these ideas to work with their owners about how to better manage the business.
Right.
And so, yeah, I wish we had a larger representation of service managers, as well, but we'll get there all in due time.
So, for the future, do you have any predictions outside of more Vegas next year? What are some things that kind of come to mind that you would hope to see?
Um, so I have a few ideas. And I'll be shopping some of these ideas around with MSPs. Nothing final yet. I think we have a few things that are happening, right? That the attack pattern ecosystem, I think, is relatively static. We'll see some stuff coming out of AI, and
Mhm.
autonomous AI hacking. We'll see some of that stuff over the next year, but I don't think that's enough to like build a conference around.
No.
Um, and ultimately, I don't like to go after the shiny object. I like to focus on the fundamentals. And so there is some stuff changing in the landscape from a fundamentals perspective, right? NIST CSF 2.0 just came out. Ultimately, that's going to flow downstream to CIS with some, supplementals, and maybe by the time the conference is next year, an actual new version. We'll see what happens and what their timeline looks like. You're also going to see that flow down to updates inside of the cyber defense matrix, and it's going to flow down
Yes.
to a bunch of other frameworks that MSPs have come to rely on. And so I could see, maybe going, and there'll be some new controls, new capabilities, which also means new revenue opportunities for MSPs. So I could see kind of leaning, staying core to that structured approaches and leaning in on a controls perspective too. Question is even when you try to take something like IG1 with 60 controls, how do you condense that down into 5 tech sessions?
Um,
That's an interesting challenge. So we might have to narrow in even more, on that. One thought I had was we could literally do one session per framework, make it even more
oh
complicated.
yeah,
So
that actually yeah. I would
Yeah,
hate to see I would definitely
yeah,
be interested in the miter attack one, but that would be the
yeah, for
biggest
sure.
lift.
Yeah,
Do you
and
see, an inclusion maybe on more the speaker level of more enterprises too? Because we see the same people every year, like, how do we kind of bridge that gap a little bit more? And, I love that, the person who spoke, it was the huntress session, but they brought in the guy,
Tom
from
Millar from
CISA.
CISA. Yeah,
Yes, and I loved hearing him talk about some of his points too on mandates and where like, how we can actually implement real change. Um, do you see
yeah,
us bringing in more of those, I don't wanna say authority is the wrong word, but more of
I
those
do.
organizations?
Yeah, I mean, so we had Tom Millar join the Split and Vols session. We had
Mhm.
two former MSP owner operators, now SMB CIOs, one for the county of Santa Barbara, one for a construction contracting company, join us for the business track, and really, really high levels of engagement.
Yeah.
The Q&A, like the audience really is saying we would like more time with these people to ask them questions. We want more access. And so I think the question is, how do we pair more of these kind of industry leading experts, thought leaders, whatever you want to call them, with the content folks in the core session, and then make them available to the audience outside of just the session. I think that's something we're going to be ruminating on for next year as well, to try and improve the experience, because we're never satisfied. We're always trying to make it harder on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, the experience has been pretty great already and is super engaging. So I can only imagine it's up from here.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could probably put a whole session on Microsoft licensing alone that requires a PhD. And I would sit in on that weirdly enough and be like, I don't want to go, but I really don't understand it. So I need to go sit down and
I
see
mean,
how they
at this point,
rebrand
I'm
it
like,
again.
if it's 2 decades in, if I can't understand it, I think the chances of me figuring it out are pretty slim. I'm going to leave that to someone else who gets a PhD in that topic.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay. So I kind of want to wrap it up a little bit, but like, how can everyone, now that I've learned that, which is exciting, how can people, what can they expect in the next couple weeks? We got a recap here. So everyone's going to start hearing as our hangovers go
Yep.
away and we're a
Yep.
little
So we'll
settled
get
more.
we'll get the files back from AV. We'll eventually get those uploaded to the Cybernation. That'll include speaker decks and the
Ooh.
artifacts, which will be available
Hmm.
there for folks. Um, and Yeah, and then we're gonna start working on next year. We're literally doing a post mortem tomorrow to gather all of our feedback while it's still fresh in our brains.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you will probably laugh at this, but literally on the flight home, I started the outline for next year. Like, we've already started
I'm
on
not
next year.
shocked. I'm not
Yeah.
shocked you did.
Uh, yeah, so it's it literally takes a full year to pull something like this off, because there are things we need to get lined up in certain orders to be
Right.
able to knock all the dominoes down. And so yeah, we actually have to get that learning journey locked in pretty early so
Hmm.
that we can execute on the rest of it. So yeah, but everything, basically right now we're just waiting on AV files to get the resources available to people. If you want a sneak peek as to all the sessions, Jessica Davis from MSSP Alerts was there, did a 2-part series on day 1 and day 2 that you can go read about the content and
Oh,
all the speaker
perfect.
sessions. Yeah, I actually sat down and read those this weekend.
And where can
Um,
people subscribe or follow or whatever to be able to get access once you guys announce that? Like, is it on LinkedIn we're looking to see it, or where
yeah,
can they
well,
go? Where can you
Andrew
point
Morgan
them?
usually posts. We'll probably post something as Right of Boom, which you can also follow on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm sure if you attend the cyber call, we'll talk about it there. It'll be posted in the Cyber Nation. Um, so
That's
yeah, you'll
perfect.
get access to those resources.
If you could leave one piece of advice for the people listening when it comes to attending or subjecting yourself to putting on a conference like this, what would your advice be?
I don't know. Putting on don't do that alone. You definitely want someone that knows the business, like Andrew. Makes it a lot easier. But attending, I think the challenge for MSPs is, like, you could literally be at an event every week. Some weeks there's 3 or 4 events.
Yeah.
So it's getting really hard to choose what events to go to. I think you really need to start looking at which ones are gonna help you best align your service offerings with the needs of your customers and the threats that are out there, and help you grow your business. How you figure that out, I don't know. Um, but I think, listen to your peers, go to those peer groups, talk through it. But the choice is becoming, there's choice overload in that space,
Right.
and that's
There
definitely a
is.
challenge for MSPs.
Oh, well, you heard it yourself, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's a great piece of advice, is especially as we're kicking off MSP season. And I just call it like that because I've learned this last year. It's like, oh, I'm just never unpack my bag. Okay, good to know. But think a little bit deeper when you're making that choice. It's not all location, location, location. Um, Even though apparently that does help choose what location you throw a conference. And now I'm going to use that formula for any future endeavors in Vegas where I have to convince people to follow me. But well, I'm looking forward to next year. That's going to be good. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to some of these talk tracks too as they get posted. So everyone take some time to go look for Right of Boom, look for Ryan and Andrew on LinkedIn and follow them all. And you'll get access to some pretty amazing content for free, which everyone loves free content, but especially this one. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be good. So thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us. And
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, we'll see you on the next Return of the Mac.